You arrive in Rome just after dawn. The streets are already alive, but not in the way you'd expect. There's no marble shine, no golden sun sparkling off pristine columns. No, your feet sink into dust and filth before you even take 3 steps. You were promised glory, order, aqueducts, civilization. But here, in the shadows of crumbling insulae, those overcrowded Roman apartment buildings, you discover a truth the textbooks politely leave out. Rome was loud. Rome was wet. Rome was rotting. As the sky glows orange over the rooftops, a new problem sets in. Your stomach rumbles. You haven't eaten, and breakfast in the Roman Empire is not breakfast as you know it. No toast, no coffee, no pancakes. Instead, you're offered a crust of hard bread, more rock than food, and maybe an olive if you're lucky. The bread is yesterday's, possibly last week's. There's no butter, no jam, just grit between your teeth and the feeling that chewing might cost you a tooth. But you're told that refreshment awaits. The thermae, the public bath, a luxury of the Roman world. Grand arches, echoing domes, smooth stone floors, warm water. You imagine a spa day, a little steamy relaxation. Perhaps a philosophical chat while being massaged with olive oil. Nope. First, you wait. You wait in a line of sweating bodies, everyone equally unwashed. Then you step into the changing area and realize no one's really changing. Robes drop. There is no privacy. There is no shame. There are smells. The Roman bath is a social event, and everyone is invited, including the old man with a hacking cough, including the child who just vomited in the caldarium, including lice. You strip reluctantly and step into the tepidarium, the warm room. It's humid. Your skin feels sticky immediately. Steam clings to you, but not in a relaxing way, in a suffocating way. Someone bumps into you. Another shouts across the room. A group of older men are arguing about grain prices. No one is whispering. Everyone is sweating. You think you feel a mosquito land on your ear, but then you wonder if it's a flea. And then comes the striggle. No soap, no shampoo, just oil. A heavy layer of olive oil is rubbed onto your skin by a stranger, usually a slave. Then comes the scraping. A curved bronze blade is run across your skin, meant to remove dirt, oil, and dead cells. But also, sometimes, dignity. You wince. It doesn't hurt exactly, but it doesn't feel good either. It's like being gently sanded. You try to relax in the caldarium, the hot room. But the heat is oppressive. The air is thick. Your lungs complain. You sit on a stone bench, your body aching from standing in line, from sleeping on a wooden plank the night before. And then someone splashes into the pool. And the water? It's not clean. Not by your standards. It's communal. It's warm. And something brushes your leg. You leave early. You stumble back into the open air, dizzy from the steam. Squinting against the daylight. You were supposed to feel refreshed. Instead, you feel like a boiled vegetable. Damp, tired, maybe slightly cleaner, but not by much. And you're still hungry. You return to your insula, the crowded apartment block you now call home. Your room is 4 stories up. No elevator. Just steep, narrow stairs that curve like a drunken snake. The walls seem to lean inward, and the wood beneath your feet groans as you ascend. You pass neighbors, sweaty, loud, carrying chamber pots, because yes, the latrines are outside, and no one wants to walk down 4 flights at midnight. Inside your room, the air is stale. There are no windows, just one small opening for smoke to escape when you can afford to cook. It's barely midday and already the heat presses in. Rome in summer is not kind to renters, and you're a renter. The best rooms, those near the ground, are long gone or long bought. You sleep above the baker's oven. Sometimes the warmth is welcome. Sometimes it feels like living inside a loaf of bread. Noise leaks from every wall. A baby crying, someone arguing, a dog barking. Below, a cart rolls over cobblestones like thunder. You long for silence, for a breeze, for a fan, even a manual one. But you're in ancient Rome, and comfort is not for the commoner. The city is alive, yes, but it's a restless, unwashed, unpredictable kind of life. And now it's time to face the latrine. Public toilets are a marvel of Roman engineering, or so they say. Long benches of stone, each with a hole, lined in a row. No partitions, no privacy, no dignity. You sit beside your neighbors, you talk, you make eye contact. You try not to think about the sponge on a stick shared by everyone and rinsed in a channel of dirty water. If you're lucky, there's no line. If you're really lucky, you leave without stepping in anything. By late afternoon, you're told it's time for cena, dinner. At last, a chance to rest and eat something hearty. But you're not wealthy. You don't recline on cushions while being served roast peacock. No one reads poetry while you sip wine. Instead, you buy a bowl of lentils from a street vendor. They're lukewarm, maybe seasoned with garum, fermented fish sauce that smells like despair. You eat quickly, hoping the bread isn't moldy this time. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve. The sun lowers and shadows creep across the forum. But the day isn't over. There's a fire down the street. Someone left a lamp burning near a curtain. Flames rise. You hear shouting. You smell smoke. There are no fire trucks, just men with buckets. If it spreads, it spreads. If the wind is wrong, your building could vanish before morning. You wonder, do you run? Do you pray? Do you sleep? The night settles in, heavy and uncertain. You lie on your straw-stuffed mattress, surrounded by brick and fear. Rats rustle in the corner. Your neighbor snores. Somewhere, a drunk is singing. You miss modern life. You miss plumbing and soap and toothpaste. And it's only been one day. You wake up in the Roman Empire, but it's not the postcard version with grand marble temples, polished statues, and disciplined soldiers marching in perfect formation. No, your day begins in the shadowy corner of a narrow alley behind a crumbling tenement building, with the sun barely peeking over the terracotta rooftops. The smell hits first: smoke, sweat, fermented fish sauce, and something else you can't quite place. Spoiled milk, human waste, burning goat hair, possibly all of them. Welcome to Rome. The streets aren't made for walking, they're made for survival. You step outside and instantly regret it. The cobblestones are slick with something. Could be spilled wine, could be blood, could be yesterday's dinner reappearing as today's breakfast for the flies. Every step you take is a gamble. You're not wearing sandals with modern traction either. Your cheap leather soles slip and slide with every shift of your weight. You narrowly avoid a donkey cart careening around a corner, driven by a man yelling curses in Latin while lashing his reins. He doesn't slow down. No one does. Not for you. Not for anyone. You're not a senator or a general. You're barely a name. You're part of the anonymous urban mass. Plebs, commoners, grain card holders. Replaceable. You pass an open sewer, which is really just a shallow gutter running down the middle of the road. It carries everything away. Rainwater, animal waste, human waste, dead rodents, broken dreams. The rich have indoor plumbing. You have this. You see a child crouching to relieve himself directly into it. He looks up at you. Neither of you flinch. This is normal. Above you, the insulae, Rome's infamous apartment blocks, lean and creak. They are fire traps, stacked 5 to 7 stories high, made of wood and cheap brick, with staircases narrow enough to qualify as a death sentence. They sway slightly with the wind, or maybe that's just your imagination. You hear a shout, then a splash. Someone's emptied a chamber pot out a window. You're lucky it missed. You wonder how anyone survives here. And the truth is, many don't. The city is overcrowded, and the grain supply barely keeps up. You make your way toward the market hoping to find something to eat. The stalls are loud, full of shouting, bartering, posturing. There are figs so bruised they look like they've been punched, bread that's more stone than flour, fish so old even the cats refuse to sniff them. But you take what you can get, half a loaf, a few olives, and a questionable sausage. Breakfast of champions. You're jostled from behind. A man grumbles something about foreigners. You keep your head down. Conflict is easy to start and hard to end. The Roman street doesn't forgive weakness. You learn to be small, quiet, alert. Just then, a procession blocks the way. A group of religious zealots march by in white robes, chanting and swinging incense. People bow their heads. Others roll their eyes. Religion is everywhere. One god, 10 gods, household gods, imported gods. You nod along, unsure which one you're supposed to respect at this hour. You finally make it back to your insula, a cramped, unstable apartment building made of bargain bin materials, and a prayer. There are no elevators, just splintered wooden stairs that wind their way upward like a drunk snake. You live on the 4th floor, not by choice, but because it's cheaper. The higher you go, the less you pay. Why? Because not if, a fire breaks out, the bottom floors escape first. You get smoke and screams. You reach your door, which is more a suggestion than a barrier. It creaks open with a groan, revealing your entire living space. One room, no windows, one cot stuffed with straw that scratches your skin in the night, and a small oil lamp that smokes too much and lights too little. There is no privacy. You hear everything your neighbor does, everything. And if you make too much noise, they hear you too. The walls are thin as papyrus and less durable. The air inside your room is stale, humid, and carries the faint but constant scent of mildew. Mold blooms in the corners. You tried to clean it once, but gave up when the walls started crumbling. The ceiling leaks when it rains, and the floorboards feel soft beneath your feet in places where they really shouldn't. Still, it's home. Sort of. You try to rest, but sleep doesn't come easy. Not when the street outside is alive with shouting, clanging, and the distant sound of someone vomiting from too much wine and not enough judgment. A group of drunks starts a brawl just outside. One of them yells something about Caesar. The others disagree. Loudly. Someone throws a jug. It shatters. You flinch. Suddenly, you smell smoke. Your body goes rigid. Is it just someone cooking over a fire pit? Or is this it? The moment your building becomes a pyre. You sniff the air again. No, just roasted chickpeas and burning oil. You exhale slowly, but the fear never leaves. Fires are common. Death is common. You keep your sandals by the door, just in case. When dawn finally creeps through the cracks in your wall, you haven't truly slept. You're groggy, hungry again. Your back hurts. Your throat is dry. and you realize this was just one night in ancient Rome, and already your modern body is cracking under the pressure. There are no soft beds here, no air conditioning, no noise canceling walls, no antibiotics, no escape from the grime, the heat, the rot, and the chaos. You start to understand, truly understand, why lifespans were short, why people prayed to dozens of gods, why wine was safer than water, why even the most powerful men in history still clutched amulets and performed rituals. Because the Roman Empire may have ruled the world, but it was a world that chewed you up long before you ever had the chance to be remembered. You thought the streets were stone and order, but truth, they were wild rivers of noise, dirt, danger, and desperation. You thought Rome was glorious. It was, but only if you were rich. And you? You wouldn't have lasted a day. Food, one of the few comforts of life, or at least that's what you thought, before waking up hungry in the heart of the Roman Empire. Your stomach growls. You imagine bread, eggs, maybe a bit of cheese. But here, in 2nd century Rome, breakfast is more of a suggestion than a meal. There's no bacon sizzling, no strong coffee brewing. Instead, you're handed a thin piece of stale bread and maybe, if Jupiter is smiling upon you, an olive that tastes like sadness. Roman meals follow a strict rhythm: ientaculum, a light breakfast; prandium, a simple midday meal; and the grand finale, cena, the main dinner. But none of it will resemble the feast your modern taste buds expect. The average Roman citizen doesn't dine with reclining couches and silk napkins. That's for patricians. You? You're lucky to eat sitting on a wooden stool in a smoky alley. The bread is hard, literally. It was likely baked days ago and stored in a dark corner where the rats and roaches debated over who gets first dibs. It smells faintly of ashes. You chew it slowly, cautiously. Your teeth ache. There's a reason Roman dental tools included pliers. You head to the market for your midday meal. The open-air stalls are crowded. The sun beats down on piles of fruit, meat, and seafood that have been sitting out since dawn. There's no refrigeration. The smell of salted fish mingles with sweat and smoke. You pass by a man chopping what looks like goat intestines. Flies orbit like vultures. He offers you a skewer of mystery meat. You decline. You find a stall selling porridge, pulse, a Roman staple. It's a grayish mash of barley and water, occasionally mixed with beans if the vendor is feeling generous. It looks like someone tried to cook sadness and gave up halfway. Still, you pay a few coins, take the bowl, and sit against a wall to eat. The texture is glue. The flavor is absent. You try to pretend it's warm oatmeal, but it's barely lukewarm. A bug swims near the surface. You look away and keep eating. Hunger is stronger than pride. Suddenly, a trumpet sounds in the distance. A group of soldiers march by. They're carrying sacks of grain, public rations. People rush toward them. The crowd swells, jostling and yelling. You watch as a man snatches a loaf and runs. Another tries the same and is tackled. The guards laugh. There is no food security here. The empire feeds its people, but only barely. If the grain ships from Egypt are delayed, famine follows. Bread riots are real. They've toppled emperors. The stomach, it turns out, is a powerful political force. You start to feel it now. The nausea. Maybe from the porridge. Maybe from the smell of salted mackerel baking in the sun behind you. Your body isn't used to this. You want a salad. You want something green. But Romans don't eat salads as you know them. Lettuce exists, sure, but it's wilted, bitter, and swimming in vinegar. You rise, still hungry, slightly sick, and profoundly disappointed. The day is not over, and neither is your digestive discomfort. Evening falls over Rome like a curtain soaked in smoke. The city cools, but only slightly. The heat clings to the stone walls and baked streets like a second skin. You're starving again. Dinner, cena, approaches. The main meal of the day. This is supposed to be the time when things improve. The wealthy lounge in tricliniums, fanned by slaves, sipping imported wines, their tables groaning with roasted birds, figs dipped in honey, and spiced dormice. Yes, rodents. You, however, are not invited to that dinner. You're headed to a popina, a Roman tavern that smells like bad decisions and old wine. The interior is dimly lit by oil lamps that flicker in the smoke. The walls are stained with grease and graffiti. Latin scrawls mark insults, prices, and crude jokes about senators. You sit at a wooden bench that wobbles with every breath. A man beside you snores face down in a plate of boiled lentils. The server arrives and grunts. You order the daily special, fried fish. It arrives with bones intact, head included, and a generous pour of garum, the infamous Roman fermented fish sauce. It smells like low tide at a dockyard morgue. You hesitate, then bite. The taste? Salty, sharp, and oddly addictive. But a few more bites, and your stomach starts to churn. You sip wine, watered down, as tradition demands. But Roman wine isn't refined. It's gritty, harsh, often flavored with resin or herbs, sometimes even lead for sweetness. You drink anyway. You have to. The water is worse. At the table next to you, two men argue over the best gladiator in the Colosseum. One slams his cup. The other stands. Voices rise. You tense. Will this be another street brawl? A knife in the ribs over sports debate? The server calms them. They sit. You exhale. As you finish your meal, your belly protests. The garum is staging a rebellion. Your body, raised on modern food safety laws, doesn't know how to handle fish fermented in clay jars under the sun for months. You stumble home, gripping your gut like it might fall out. Along the way, a street performer juggles knives and fire. A boy sells roasted chestnuts from a barrel. The smells turn your stomach. Back in your room, you collapse onto your cot. The fire's out. The lamp flickers. You hope you survive the night. The food might not kill you directly, but it's doing its best. Your dreams are vivid and strange. Giant chickens, vomiting senators, a rain of olives. You wake at dawn, sweating and unsure whether it was food poisoning or a divine vision. One thing is certain. You're hungry again, and terrified of breakfast. The sun hasn't even risen, but the city is already alive. You're awake, barely, eyes crusted, back aching, and stomach growling. But today, there's no time for complaints, because today, you're going to work. Don't get excited. You're not a senator, not a scholar, not even a proper shopkeeper. You're a laborer, one of thousands eking out a living with your hands, your back, and your tolerance for filth. The first job offered to you this morning? Fulanica. Sounds exotic. It's not. You're about to work in a Roman laundry, except the Romans didn't wash clothes with soap and water. No, they used urine. Yes, human urine. Collected from jars on the street corners where people relieve themselves in public. The ammonia in the urine helped clean the garments. So you spend the morning knee-deep in a vat of lukewarm, yellowish fluid, stomping on tunics with your bare feet like you're crushing grapes. The stench is unforgettable. Your nose burns. Your skin itches. The smell seeps into your pores, your hair, your soul. No amount of rinsing will erase this experience. Your supervisor, a wiry man with a constant scowl and a missing eyebrow, barks at you to move faster. The senator's toga must be white, he screams, as if your dignity weren't already floating in the vat. At midday, you're allowed a break, but not to eat. No, you're reassigned. You're sent down the street to assist in cleaning the public latrine. Roman public toilets are ingenious. Long stone benches with holes, all connected to flowing water systems underneath. But even with that engineering marvel, someone still has to scrub. That someone is now you. The work is hot, it's thankless, and it's dangerous. You slip once and almost fall in. You catch yourself just in time. No one helps, no one notices. While scrubbing, you overhear two men arguing about the price of olive oil. One of them sneezes. The other says it's an omen. You're not sure which god covers sanitation mishaps, but you whisper a quick prayer to all of them, just in case. By mid-afternoon, you're drenched in sweat and your knees ache. You're moved again to the tanner's quarter. This is where leather is made. Animal hides are soaked in water, then scraped clean of flesh and hair. Then they're soaked again in lime, dog dung, and more urine. Yes, more. The smell here makes the laundry vat seem like a perfume bath. Your eyes water, your throat clenches, you gag, but there's no stopping. The tanner throws a hide at your chest and tells you to scrape. The blade is dull. The hide is heavy. Every pull feels like it's removing a year from your life. As the sun begins to dip behind the city's hazy skyline, you think, foolishly, that your day might be winding down. But in ancient Rome, the labor doesn't end with sunset, especially not for people like you. Your final task for the evening? Haul in night soil. It's exactly what it sounds like. The collection and transportation of human waste from chamber pots and public latrines to the outskirts of the city, where it's either dumped or, worse, repurposed as fertilizer. A donkey cart waits for you, already half filled with sloshing wooden buckets. The smell makes your teeth ache. The cart creaks as you push it through the narrow back alleys. People cover their noses and curse you as you pass, though most of them will rely on workers like you to keep their own doorsteps clean. You're invisible until you're inconvenient. At one stop, a man tosses his overflowing pot down from the second floor without warning. The contents splatter across the cobblestones, narrowly missing your feet. He doesn't apologize. You don't expect him to. The social ladder is steep, and you're clinging to the bottom rung with both hands, and one very full bucket. You empty the last of it outside the walls, where a shallow pit has been dug by others like you. You gag again. The stink clings to your tunic. It's in your hair, your fingernails, your memories. You'll smell this moment for the rest of your life, however long that is. You trudge home in the dark. The streets are quieter now, but not safer. You pass a group of young men gambling by torchlight. One eyes your coin pouch. You grip it tightly and keep walking. A stray dog snarls from a shadow. You don't break stride. Back in your room, you strip off your clothes and attempt to rinse the worst of the day away with a few ladles of water. But the grime isn't just on your skin. It's under it, inside it. You sit down, your bones heavy, your hands trembling from hours of scrubbing, scraping, hauling, enduring. And the worst part? You'll do it all again tomorrow, because in Rome, survival isn't about glory. It's about repetition, grit, endurance. Your job may smell worse than death, but at least it means you're still alive. You curl up on your straw mat. Your muscles ache. Your stomach is empty again. And as your eyelids droop, you wonder if the patricians in their villas even know how any of this happens. They probably don't, and they probably wouldn't care. But they'd still expect their togas white, their wine chilled, and their streets spotless. Thanks to you, you've survived the streets. You've eaten the fish. You've washed the togas in pee. But today, your luck runs out. You're sick. Maybe it was the garum. Maybe it was the cloud of street dust and dung particles. Maybe it was fate. Either way, you've got chills, a pounding head, a sore throat, and something you can only describe as ancient intestinal betrayal. In the modern world, you'd pop 2 pills and call it a day. But here, in ancient Rome, you're going to the doctor. Or, more accurately, the medicus, a man with a beard, a blade, and exactly 0 formal qualifications. The medicus greets you in a dusty, darkened room that smells of vinegar, old herbs, and regret. He doesn't ask about your symptoms. He looks you up and down, grunts, and begins rummaging through clay jars labeled in scrawled Latin. He presses your wrist for a pulse, listens to your chest with his ear, and frowns thoughtfully. Diagnosis: imbalance of humors. His solution? A little of everything. First, bloodletting. He pulls out a bronze lancet, already stained brown from previous clients. You flinch. He tells you not to worry. It worked for Caesar. You remind him that Caesar was stabbed to death. He doesn't laugh. He slices a vein in your arm, and blood drips into a basin. You feel lightheaded immediately. Good, he says. The bad blood is leaving. You hope your life force isn't going with it. Next up, leeches. He plops 3 onto your neck without warning. They squirm. You squirm. He smiles. Nature's little physicians, he says. You wonder if they've been fed today, or if you're the special. Then comes the herbal remedy, a mix of crushed garlic, vinegar, and goose fat, smeared across your chest while he chants something to Asclepius, god of healing. It smells like a salad left in the sun. You tell him your stomach still hurts. He nods gravely and hands you a potion, a chalky mixture of wine, honey, ashes of burned lizard, and powdered marble. You sip it. Bad idea. It tastes like regret mixed with mold. You gag. He claps. As a final flourish, he checks your astrological sign and declares that Saturn is in a bad position. You ask if that means anything. He nods solemnly and prescribes a night sleeping with a dried mouse tied to your ankle to draw out the evil spirits. You leave his home shivering, bloodless, stinking, and 12 sesterces poorer. But somehow you feel worse, and this is just the beginning. You're home now, if you can call this straw-padded corner of a smoky insula home. Your arm throbs from the bloodletting. The leeches left faint trails of gore. The garlic goose fat paste has soaked into your only tunic, and that dried mouse around your ankle is starting to smell worse than your breath. You try to rest, but sleep dodges you. So you return to the medicus, because surely there's something more effective than being gnawed on by pond creatures and cursed by Saturn. This time, the doctor offers more advanced treatments. You need heat, he says. You think he means a warm bath. He does not. He means cauterization. A long iron rod is heated in the coals until it glows orange-red. You stare at it, wide-eyed. He insists it will balance your humors. Fire drives out the cold spirit, he mutters, then presses it gently to your abdomen. You scream. You can't help it. The smell of seared skin and panic fills the room. He nods in satisfaction. It's working, he says, as if cooking you like a Roman sausage was all part of the plan. Next, you're told to inhale smoke from burned juniper bark to cleanse your lungs. The smoke chokes you, you wheeze, you cough. Your lungs burn worse than before. For your lingering stomach problems, he offers a mercury-based syrup. You recognize the metal. You shake your head. He insists it's divine. The gods put metal in the earth for us to swallow, he says confidently. You take one sip. Your vision blurs. You regret everything. For swelling in your throat, he wraps your neck in boiled cabbage leaves, then ties them in place with a strip of wool dipped in urine and saffron. He says this will draw out the illness. It mostly draws flies. By now, you're a walking experiment in pre-modern medicine. One leg wrapped in onions, one arm singed, your breath a cocktail of ash, metal, and fermented goat. You haven't improved, but you're definitely more complex. And yet, compared to others, you're lucky. You hear whispers of trepanation, the practice of boring a hole into the skull to relieve headaches and release demons. Others speak of drinking molten gold as a supposed cure for plague. Spoiler, it's not. One man was treated for a simple cough. The doctor accidentally castrated him during a humoral correction procedure. That man now sells fish and refuses to make eye contact with anyone. So when you finally stumble back to your room, groaning, woozy, and moderately flammable, you realize something profound. You're probably going to survive this illness, not because of the medicine, but in spite of it. And if you do, it'll be thanks to sheer stubbornness, divine apathy, or the fact that your body has given up trying to understand what's happening to it. You lie down. Your throat still hurts, but at least no one's waving fire at you anymore. For now. You wake up sore, half-cooked, smelling like vinegar and fear, but alive. You stretch, you breathe, you step outside, and you break the law. How? You're wearing purple. Not royal purple, mind you, just a scrap of cloth dyed with a purplish tint. Maybe from a hand-me-down or a lucky market find. But in Rome, purple is a crime if you're not in the ruling elite. It's called purpura regalis, and it's reserved for emperors and senators. Wearing it as a commoner? That's sumptuary law violation, fines, seizure, maybe flogging. You tear it off quickly, hoping no lictor saw you. Then you nearly walk down the wrong street. You're not allowed in that neighborhood. It's reserved for citizens of a higher class. Rome is obsessed with status, and crossing into certain districts without permission could get you arrested. Or worse, publicly humiliated with your name posted on a clay tablet at the forum. Later, you see a beggar. You give him a coin. It seems like a kind gesture, except it's not. You've just violated the lex annalis, a law that regulates political behavior and public appearance. You're not a public official. You're not allowed to distribute charity. That's a senatorial job. You've overstepped your place. Now the beggar might report you for a bounty. Panicking, you try to disappear into the crowd. You bump into a wealthy patrician's litter, a fancy human-powered carriage carried by slaves. You don't even touch it. Just jostle the corner. But that's offense by contact. The man scowls. His slave throws a fruit peel at your head. You bow. You apologize. It doesn't matter. You might be summoned to court. And that's the real nightmare. Because Roman courts don't exactly work the way you'd hope. There's no presumption of innocence. There's no right to remain silent. Trials often happen in public, where crowd opinion sways the outcome, and you, a nobody, stand little chance against the testimony of a patrician with 5 clients and a cousin in the Senate. Even if you win, unlikely, you still have to pay for the trial itself. You return home, sweating, looking over your shoulder. Every action feels like a potential crime. Did you throw that olive pit in the wrong direction? Did your donkey park too close to a shrine? Did you insult the wrong god? There's a law against blasphemy, too, and no one's quite sure which gods are currently in season. Even sneezing in front of a priest can lead to suspicion. You try to stay quiet, invisible, obedient. But in ancient Rome, silence is not a shield. At the market, you mutter under your breath when the bread seller overcharges you. It's just a grumble. But the stall boy hears it and reports that you've defamed a merchant. Under Roman law, defamation isn't just a social faux pas, it's a criminal offense. You're summoned by the aedile, the city magistrate in charge of public order. You stand in the hot sun, trembling. There's no formal lawyer for you. You defend yourself in front of an audience of bored citizens, some of whom boo when you speak. The baker testifies. He calls you disrespectful, a known troublemaker, a man with no toga and the scent of failed medicine. You lose. Punishment? Public flogging. It's over quickly, but leaves welts across your back. You limp home, ashamed and exhausted. That night, your neighbor invites you to a small dinner. You accept. He's a friendly man, a fellow laborer. But while there, someone cracks a joke about Emperor Tiberius. Everyone laughs. So do you. 3 days later, the neighbor disappears. You hear whispers, "Mestas," treason. That one word, laughing at the emperor, can bring the wrath of the state. His house is seized, his family questioned, his name scratched from the community list. He's damnatio memoriae, condemned to be forgotten. You start sleeping with one eye open. You begin praying louder at temples. You make offerings to minor gods you've never heard of. You wear dull clothing. You don't speak unless spoken to. But it doesn't help. One afternoon, a soldier accuses you of obstructing a procession. You didn't see it coming. You were just carrying water. But the street belonged at that moment to a visiting dignitary. You're detained. In custody, you're questioned, harshly. You haven't been tried yet, but that doesn't matter. In Rome, interrogation by torture is legal before a verdict is reached, especially for non-citizens. They want you to confess. You hold firm, you cry, you plead. Eventually, a bribe is paid by your cousin, who sells his ox to do it. You're released, alive, but changed. From now on, you count every step, every glance, every syllable, because in Rome, being poor isn't just hard, it's dangerous. Even your own existence can be a crime if it's in the wrong place, in front of the wrong person, at the wrong time, and no one will remember your name. You've survived the day, barely. Your back aches from punishment. Your stomach churns from wine-laced lizard syrup. Your brain spins from dodging laws you didn't know existed. All you want now is sleep. But Roman nights, they don't let you rest. You lie down on your straw mat. The room is small, 4 walls of crumbling plaster, shared with 2 other tenants. The smell of boiled cabbage and unwashed feet clings to the air. You pull a rough woolen blanket over yourself and close your eyes. Then the noise begins. First, it's the street vendors still hawking stale bread and figs by torchlight, their voices echoing off stone walls. Then come the donkeys, braying and clopping over uneven cobblestones. Their drivers shout, urging them home or to market. There's no concept of quiet hours in Rome. You turn over. Try to breathe. From the next room, a couple arguing, loudly. Something about debt. Then a crash. Then sobbing. You're not sure who won. Above you, someone is practicing flute. Badly. Next door, a group of young men laugh and stomp around their room. They're drinking, maybe celebrating, maybe just bored. The wall is thin. You hear everything. Every clink of cup, every slurred insult, every burst of laughter that turns into shouting. Someone starts singing, off key. You finally drift toward sleep, barely, when the thunder of chariots rattles the window. Rich Romans like to show off their horses even at midnight. The wheels scream against the stone. A dog barks, then another. A whole choir erupts. You sit up, rubbing your temples. The city is alive, buzzing, grinding. Rome doesn't sleep. You peek out the window. Below, a public urinal is occupied by a man having a loud philosophical debate with himself. Nearby, a thief is quietly prying at a door. No one stops him. Everyone is pretending not to notice. You crawl back to bed, and just as you start to drift again, the priest's bell rings. A torch-lit religious procession stomps down the street, chanting. They're honoring Mercury, or maybe Neptune. You've lost track, but you know this. It's loud. There's incense. There are drums. You can't escape it. Your eyelids flutter. Your body wants to shut down, but noise keeps dragging you back. And this isn't even the worst of it, because Roman nights aren't just loud. They're dangerous. You're lying in the dark now, barely held together by sheer exhaustion. But there's a chill in your gut, not from sickness, from fear. Because Rome at night belongs to more than just noise. It belongs to shadows. You hear a soft rustling outside your window. Then the clink of metal. Not the clatter of coins, but something sharper. A blade, a tool. You hold your breath. A whisper. Then another. Thieves, spies, drunken soldiers. In Rome, any of them could be true. Street crime thrives in the dark. The narrow alleys are a maze of opportunity for footpads. Thugs who work in twos or threes, ready to beat or stab for a coin pouch. You clutch your tunic tighter. There's no police. Not really. A few watchmen, poorly paid and easily bribed, walk with torches. But they avoid trouble more than prevent it. If something happens to you, justice won't arrive until morning, if at all. And the worst part? Fires. Rome is a city built of wood and dreams. The insulae, those apartment buildings that rise like termite mounds, are dry, flammable, and packed with families. One overturned lamp, one clumsy cook, that's all it takes. Suddenly, flames, screams, stomping feet, people rushing down stairs that crumble under their weight. Women tossing children from windows, hoping someone catches them. You've heard stories. And tonight, you smell smoke. Your heart pounds. Is it your building? The one next door? You slip out of bed, peer into the night. The glow is faint, but real. You don't know what to do. There are no fire departments, just bucket lines, neighbors, prayers. You sit in your room, sleepless, sweating, wondering if you'll need to flee in seconds. Then come the drunken brawls. A gang of ex-soldiers is throwing fists in the Forum. One has a gladius, another smashes a jug. Blood hits the stones. No one stops them. People step around the scene. It's just another Roman night. Elsewhere, a slave is whipped in the dark courtyard for dropping a tray. You hear every cry. You do nothing. To speak out is dangerous. To get involved is worse. And if you're not Roman, if you're a foreigner, or worse, a slave yourself, you live every night like prey. Even whispering the wrong name under the wrong moon can cost you a finger, or a future. Eventually, you pass out, not from comfort, but from collapse. Your dreams are warped by chance, firelight, and distant howls. When dawn comes, the city is already awake. The baker yells, the donkeys bray. A corpse is pulled from a well. No one knows his name. You survived another Roman night, but only barely, and there are many more to come. After days of stench, smoke, and sleepless agony, you decide you've earned something rare in ancient Rome, a bit of comfort, a bath. You shuffle your aching bones to the nearest therme, a grand public bathhouse. From the outside, it looks glorious. Marble columns, fountains, statues of gods posed in eternal nudity. Inside, you hand a slave your sandals and tunic. He grunts and tosses them in a heap. You step into the changing room, where dozens of other naked Romans are already arguing, oiling themselves, or simply scratching parts best left unobserved. Welcome to the heart of Roman leisure. You start with the tepidarium, the warm room. The air is humid. The walls sweat like your forehead. You breathe deeply. It smells like a mix of rosemary and unwashed humanity. You sit on a smooth bench. It's still wet from someone else's behind. You try not to think about it. A slave pours olive oil over your shoulders. You didn't ask, but this is part of the process. Soap doesn't exist here. Instead, oil is used to clean the skin. Next, the strigil appears, a curved metal scraper. The slave starts scraping the oil, sweat, and filth from your back in long strokes. It's supposed to be relaxing. It feels like being descaled like a fish. You wince. He scrapes harder. You're then motioned toward the caldarium, the hot room. And it is hot. The heat hits like a Roman punch. The floor scorches your feet. You step quickly across steaming tiles and lower yourself into the hot plunge pool. The water is cloudy. You pretend not to notice. A man beside you coughs into the pool. Someone else is clipping toenails. Another blows his nose into the steam. You want to scream, but everyone else seems perfectly content. A senator soaks next to a slave. Status doesn't matter here, just germs. Next to you, a man whispers about politics. Another reads poetry aloud. One old man sighs deeply, scratches his armpit, and then dips his whole body underwater. You try not to gag, but at least you're clean now, right? Not exactly. The water here is rarely changed. It's warmed by hippocausts, underground furnaces, but the same water is reused for days. Bathers cycle through endlessly. Every oil, every flake of skin, every glob of ancient mucus lingers. This is less like a cleansing, more like a stew of human residue. And then you notice your mistake. You've stayed too long in the heat. Your head spins. Your heart races. Romans believed this kind of sweating released bad humors, but they didn't know about heat stroke. You stand suddenly, bad idea. The floor is slick. Your feet slide. You crash. Laughter erupts. No one helps. You crawl out of the caldarium, humiliated, bruised, and still vaguely filthy. And you haven't even reached the cold plunge yet. You're dizzy, soaked, and your dignity is somewhere at the bottom of the caldarium. But the ritual isn't over. Not until you face the final chamber, the frigidarium, the cold plunge. Romans believed this icy shock sealed the pores and revitalized the spirit. What it really does is make your joints seize and your breath vanish. You step toward the marble-edged pool. Mist rises like a ghost. The water looks like melted knives. Your foot touches the surface, and your body screams in protest. Every nerve shrivels. Your lungs forget how to inhale. You lower yourself slowly, trembling, teeth clattering like castanets. Around you, older men lounge calmly, as if their circulatory systems were forged from bronze. One hums, another dunks his head under, emerging with a wild grin. You hate them all. You last maybe 20 seconds. It's enough. You exit the pool shivering, heart hammering. But there's still the final stage of the bathhouse journey, massage and gossip. You're herded into a room with stone beds, where untrained slaves pound your back with fists, elbows, or, if you're lucky, a warm cloth. It's supposed to be relaxing, but one slave seems to be working out personal trauma on your spine. You grunt. He grunts louder. Then someone starts talking politics. Loudly. You try to ignore it, but it's impossible. In Rome, bathhouses are social hubs. Senators strike deals. Gladiators are recruited. Affections blossom and rivalries ignite. If you say the wrong thing to the wrong person in this humid fog of testosterone and oil, you might leave with more than bruises. You dress. Or rather, you search for your tunic in a pile of identical tunics, none labeled. You pick one that smells least like goat. It's probably not yours. Nobody cares. You exit into the blinding sun, dripping, disoriented, skin scraped raw, and then you sneeze. A bystander flinches. Someone mutters about bad omens. Another crosses himself and walks away. You're not just wet now, you're socially contaminated. Back in your insula, you collapse onto your straw mat. Do you feel cleaner? Hard to say. You're sore, mildly insulted, possibly infected with something unnameable and colder than the wine they dilute with water. But you survived. Barely. Some Romans didn't. Old men collapsed in the heat. Children drowned in slippery pools. More than one citizen slipped, cracked their skull, and never left the bathhouse again. Cleanliness, as it turns out, may be next to godliness. But in Rome, it's also next to death. After the noise, the laws, the streets, and the baths, you've managed to stay alive, for now. But now, you're hungry. And hunger in ancient Rome isn't just a sensation. It's a social divide, a risk, and sometimes a trap. You're a plebeian, a commoner. That means your daily menu is simple. Bread, lentils, maybe some cheese if you're lucky. A bit of wine diluted with water. It's not glamorous, but it fills the belly. Sort of. But today, you've been invited. A friend of a friend who works for a grain merchant offers you a seat at his master's cena, an evening meal hosted in the back courtyard of a larger domus. You're honored, nervous, starving. When you arrive, the difference in class is immediate. You're seated low on a worn cushion. The patricians, nobles, and their favorites recline on luxurious couches, fed grapes by slaves, sipping wine from silver goblets. The food arrives, and it is glorious at first. Roasted dormice, stuffed with herbs and nuts, honey-glazed duck, sea urchins, eel, and eggs dyed red with mulberry juice. You've never tasted anything like it. But here's what no one tells you. Roman seasoning isn't about salt or sugar. It's about fermented fish guts. Called garum, it's the centerpiece of Roman flavor, poured generously over nearly every dish. The smell is sharp, sour, almost alive. It's salty, it's tangy, it's vaguely threatening, and it masks the real problem: spoilage. Without refrigeration, most meats are preserved with salt, smoke, or simply disguised under spices. You take a bite of pork that tastes a little off, but everyone around you is smiling. So you smile too. You eat more, and then you drink. Roman wine isn't your modern Bordeaux. It's strong, gritty, often mixed with seawater or herbs. You down a cup to be polite, then another, then you lose count, because refusing wine is rude, and vomiting, that's encouraged. There are bowls for it. You're sweating now, your stomach churns. Is it the wine, the eel, or the snail that looked too colorful to be natural? You excuse yourself. You stumble behind a curtain, find a corner, and retch. Someone claps. You're doing it the Roman way, they cheer. You're dying. You return to the table, pale and shaky, but you're not alone. Several other guests have also stepped away to vomit. In Rome, that's not considered rude. It's simply part of making more room for more food. A slave hands you a moist cloth. You wipe your face. Then more plates arrive. Stuffed figs, honeyed locusts, lamb kidneys. Every bite a gamble. And now, the main event, dessert. A large decorated cake is brought out with fanfare. Inside, a surprise. It could be nuts, it could be coins, it could be a knife. Because in some Roman circles, especially among the rich and paranoid, desserts are more than treats. They're weapons. Poisoning was shockingly common in elite Roman society, and the dining table was the perfect battleground. It was a place of power, trust, and vulnerability, all served on silver trays. Sometimes it was a jealous wife, sometimes a political rival, sometimes just a noble bored enough to test a new concoction of hemlock and mushrooms. The trick? You never know until it's too late. You eye the cake. A senator beside you declines. Suspicious, smart, maybe both. You take a tiny bite. It tastes fine. But your stomach already feels like it's hosting a rebellion. Then someone at the far end of the table drops his cup. Silence. His hands twitch. His eyes roll. Within seconds, he slumps forward into the lentil dish. A few guests gasp. One claps politely, thinking it's theater. It's not. The host sighs and waves a slave forward. The man's body is dragged out. No fuss. The feast continues. You blink. No one seems bothered. Turns out death at dinner isn't uncommon. Roman poisoners are so skilled they can kill with oil, sweet wine, even flower petals soaked in something sinister. And blame? That's for the gods to sort out. But it's not just poison that's a threat. It's the food itself. Rotten oysters, bad garum, bread laced with ergot, a mold that causes hallucinations, seizures, and sometimes death. Without microscopes or food safety laws, every meal is a culinary roulette. Wheel. You look down at your plate. Half-eaten eel, a grape soaked in honey. You suddenly don't feel hungry anymore. The meal ends with a toast. You raise your cup, but don't drink. Just smile. Pretend. Survive. When you finally stumble home, stomach tight with regret and nausea, you realize eating well in Rome isn't about appetite. It's about luck. And tonight, you had just enough. You wake up parched. Your mouth is dry. Your tongue feels like it's been dragged through sand. After last night's meal, or was it a battlefield? You need water. Clean, cold water. But this is ancient Rome, and water hates you. You shuffle to the communal fountain in your insula's courtyard. A thin trickle of water flows from a lion-shaped spout into a chipped stone basin. You cup your hands. The water is lukewarm, slightly cloudy. You drink anyway. A mistake. Romans were masters of aqueducts, it's true. They built incredible systems to carry fresh water across miles, using gravity and stone to feed cities, baths, fountains, even private homes. But here's what the history books don't highlight. The water wasn't always clean. Sure, it started pure, high in the Apennines. But by the time it reached your mouth, it had passed through lead pipes, open-air channels, public basins where people wash their feet, their laundry, sometimes their pigs. You just drank that. And yes, the famous lead pipes, the fistulae, made things worse. The Romans didn't know about lead poisoning, but they sure experienced its effects. Headaches, infertility, memory loss, mood swings. You think you're just hungover? You might be slowly dying. But even without the lead, the standing water in public cisterns was a breeding ground for bacteria. Romans didn't boil drinking water. They didn't filter it. They trusted the gods and their plumbing. You begin to feel a familiar churn in your gut. Maybe it was the duck, maybe the grape, or maybe it was the invisible bacteria now colonizing your intestines. But what if you're rich? What if you're one of the lucky few with piped-in water at home? Still not safe. Private homes use storage tanks, open to air, heat, insects. Algae grew, mice drowned, mosquitoes hatched. You could pour a glass of water and accidentally drink a week-old gnat. Some Romans added wine to water to purify it. Others added vinegar. A few boiled it for the sick. But most, they drank it as is, because water looked clear, and that was enough. Still thirsty? Let's say you're lucky enough to avoid the cistern, the lead, and the fountain slime. You decide to drink from a public nymphaeum, those grand decorative fountains carved into marble, blessed by gods and guarded by statues. They look pure. They sound holy. They're not. Children play in them. Dogs bathe. Sometimes the water is just runoff from the thermae, the very same baths where dozens of Romans soaked, scraped, and sneezed. And let's not forget the Tiber River. Rome's liquid, backbone, sacred, powerful, and filthy. It's where people washed clothes, dumped waste, tossed corpses, and sometimes even bathed, yes, bathed, if they couldn't afford a trip to the thermae. You imagine dipping your face in a cool stream of history. In reality, you're inhaling parasites, fecal bacteria, and whatever floated down from the slaughterhouse upstream. Still, water is essential. So Romans got creative. They flavored it with herbs, vinegar, wine, or pasca, a sour drink made from water and old wine. Soldiers drank it daily. So did laborers. And while it killed some bacteria, it didn't kill the worms. Some families paid equerri, water carriers, to deliver cleaner water from highland springs. But these men often cut corners, mixing fresh water with cheaper stuff from lowland wells. You paid for purity. You got dysentery. And if your illness worsened, you'd be treated by a medicus who might bleed you or give you laxatives, more fluids. The irony is bitter. So, you take a chance with well water. That's what finally does it. The well is deep, ancient, and cursed, not by spirits but by design. Rainwater, contaminated by nearby latrines, seeps in. You drink. 2 days later, you're lying in bed, feverish, dehydrated, hallucinating about Neptune dragging you back into the Tiber. By the time a priest arrives to bless your water jug, it's too late. You weren't killed by swords, stones, or Caesar. You were killed by water. It begins with smoke. You're lying on your straw mat, dreaming of clean fountains and food without parasites when you smell something. Faint. Charred. Familiar. Fire. Not the kind in a brazier or kitchen hearth. This is wilder. It stings your nose. It whispers panic. You bolt upright. In your tiny second-floor room of a Roman insula, space is tight, wood is dry, and everything burns faster than you can say Jupiter. Someone outside screams, not in pain, yet, but in alarm. That's worse. You rush to the window. The building across the street is glowing, not golden, not divine, orange, violent, alive. You grab your sandals. But there's a problem. Only one narrow staircase for the entire apartment. Made of wood. Old wood. You hear it creak. You smell the pitch that once sealed it, now feeding the flames. Too late. The bottom floor is already on fire. The roof above is heating like an oven. Your walls, plastered over with cheap stucco and painted gods, begin to flake. The air is thick, black. You cough. You crawl. This is not rare. Rome burned frequently. The city was dense, chaotic. Buildings leaned inward over alleys. Flames leapt from one window to the next like drunk acrobats. And guess what? No fire department. Not a real one, anyway. There was the vigils, a sort of watchman crew who doubled as bucket brigade firefighters when they weren't busy demanding bribes or showing up too late. Most Romans fought fire themselves, with urine-soaked blankets, buckets from the nearest fountain, or sheer willpower. You don't have time for any of that. You burst out onto a balcony, leap to a nearby rooftop, scramble like a rat, barefoot. A tile slips. You nearly fall. Below, someone's goat screams. You're not even surprised anymore. Your neighbor, Gaius, is standing in a tunic, holding a statue of Minerva and shouting at the sky. Another man is already rebuilding in his head, while his home collapses behind him. This is normal. Rome burns. It always has. Dawn rises red, but not the romantic kind. This red comes from smoke clinging to the sky, casting an eerie haze over what used to be your neighborhood. Your feet are black with soot, your tunic torn, your lungs ache, but you're alive. The building is gone, just ash and bones of timber, with a few iron hinges poking out like broken ribs. You wander through it like a ghost. You look for anything, a coin, a sandal, a spoon. You find a doll's arm, you drop it. A neighbor's child is missing. Maybe she escaped, maybe not. Someone is blaming a rival. Others say it was divine punishment. One priest blames Vesta's neglect, the goddess of hearth and fire. Another claims the emperor planned it to clear land for new temples. Conspiracy grows like mold, but your stomach doesn't care. You're hungry, homeless, and unlike today's world, there's no fire insurance, no emergency aid, no phone call to make, just ruins and rumors. The landlord blames you. He says your cooking fire sparked the blaze. You weren't even home, but no matter. You're poor. You're voiceless. The law favors the rich, always. If you complain, you might be flogged, or fined, or just ignored. So you say nothing. Later, you hear the emperor will build a new fountain on the ruins. Something beautiful, something symbolic, but not for you. You sleep in the streets now, among the rats, dogs, and drunks, covered by a blanket you stole from an abandoned stall. You dream of water that isn't foul, bread that isn't burned, homes that don't disappear overnight. You dream of leaving Rome, but where would you go? You hear Alexandria's nice, unless the plague comes. You hear Britannia's peaceful, unless it rains. You hear peace exists, but never here, not in Rome. Your head is pounding. It started with a mild fever, a little fatigue, maybe something you ate, or drank, or touched. Who knows? This is ancient Rome. Everything is a risk. You try to rest, but the clay walls around you amplify the noise. Outside, a cart clatters past, a goat bleats in protest, and someone coughs. A dry, wet, ominous sound that feels too close for comfort. You need help. You call for a medicus. And that, dear viewer, is your real mistake. Roman medicine was a wild concoction of Greek philosophy, folk superstition, and whatever animal parts were lying around. There were no sterile gloves, no microscopes, no understanding of germs or infection. Your doctor arrives wearing a tunic with a red hem. That's how you know he's trained. He carries a leather bag full of herbs, bronze tools, and confidence that vastly outweighs his competence. He doesn't wash his hands. He presses his fingers against your forehead. You're sweating. Humors, he mutters. Your black bile is unbalanced. You don't know what that means. Neither does he. But he opens his bag. Out comes the cupping bowl, a blade, a jar of leeches. You try to object, but he insists. The only way to balance the humors is to bleed you. So he does. He slices your forearm and places the cup over the wound. The blood begins to pool, dark and thick. You feel dizzy. He smiles. This is a good sign. It's the bad blood leaving you, he says. You lose consciousness. When you wake, your fever has spiked. You're soaked in sweat. The room spins. The medicus returns with a new remedy, a poultice made from mashed figs, ashes, and a bit of crushed mouse skull. He applies it to your chest with a prayer to Apollo. You try not to scream. You ask if this is normal. He nods. The worse it feels, the better it works. Of course. But what if you're rich? What if you're a Roman patrician, someone who can afford the best? Still no guarantee. Your personal physician may be Greek, which is considered sophisticated, but he's still guessing. He might prescribe boiled owl broth, donkey milk, or daily enemas with olive oil and sea sponge. And those are the good days. You're still alive. Barely. Your fever breaks for a moment, but now your stomach cramps. Your skin is pale. The neighbors whisper that you've been cursed. Your doctor agrees. Naturally, he prescribes wolf liver powder mixed with honey. Expensive, rare, questionably effective, and unfortunately not available. So instead, he brings in a second opinion, an augur, a priest who reads omens in bird guts. No, you're not hallucinating. This is Roman medicine. The augur slaughters a chicken in your room and lays its intestines on a bronze plate. He nods solemnly. The gods are displeased, he says. You need cleansing. That means a ritual bath in cow urine, followed by a night sleeping under a fig tree. Naked. You're too weak to protest. So 2 neighbors carry you to the outskirts of the Subura district, dump you in a muddy garden, and leave. The fig tree sways gently in the breeze. A rat scampers by your face. You try to sleep. Instead, you hallucinate. You see Apollo. He's laughing. Back in the city, the doctors gather at the temple of Aesculapius, the god of healing. They leave clay offerings, miniature arms, legs, and organs, to ask for divine intervention. They leave one shaped like your liver. You're not dead yet, but they're already preparing. Let's say you recover. Somehow. You want to thank your medicus, but he's gone. Already moved on to another patient, an aristocrat with a broken toe. He'll likely bleed him too, or offer urine-based ointment. There is no follow-up, no sanitation, no understanding. If you die, it was fate. If you live, it was the gods. The doctors? They always claim success, especially if the patient dies. That way, he doesn't contradict them. In ancient Rome, getting sick wasn't the problem. Getting treated was. You're walking home. You're tired. Hungry. Your tunic clings to your skin from the humidity of Rome's narrow alleys. You pass a fruit stall, and in a moment of instinct, just one small motion, you reach out and catch an apple that rolled off the edge. You weren't stealing. You were helping. But the stall owner sees you. He yells. Now a crowd forms. In Rome, perception is guilt. Before you can explain, a local guard, one of the lictors, grabs you by the neck. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't care. You're dragged through the forum like a sack of grain. Roman justice wasn't about fairness. It was about order, spectacle, control, and worst of all, it was deeply unequal. Rich citizen, you pay a fine, maybe a slap on the wrist. Poor, slave, foreigner, you're in for blood. At the local magistrate's office, you stand trembling. The judge sits behind a stone table. His robe is pristine. He doesn't look up. Accused of theft, the lictor says. You plead your case. He waves a hand. Standard penalty, he says. You know what that means. Stripes, not metaphorical ones. Literal lashes across your back, given with a flagrum. A Roman whip with weighted ends, sometimes embedded with bits of bone or metal. 2 guards hold you down. You scream. Nobody flinches. It's not even noon yet. Later, you stumble home. Your back is raw. You can't lie down. You can't stand straight. Your neighbors avoid eye contact, not out of shame, out of fear. If they help you, they might be seen as aiding a criminal. In Rome, pain was policy. It reminded everyone where they stood. And if your crime was worse, or worse, if your master said you committed something, and you're a slave, there's no trial, there's no appeal, there's only punishment. And sometimes it comes with nails and a wooden cross. You're healing. Slowly. The wounds on your back have scabbed over, but the scars will remain. And not just on your skin. You've seen how Rome works now, not by reason, not by mercy, but by fear. You hear rumors of another arrest. A woman this time. Someone whispered that she cursed her neighbor's crops. She wore too much black. She spoke too little. That was enough. She's dragged to the temple steps and publicly flogged. A priest mutters something about the gods. A magistrate signs a wax tablet. The people cheer, not because they hate her, but because they're grateful it isn't them. Roman law wasn't just about guilt. It was about status. If you were a citizen, you could appeal directly to the emperor. If you were a slave, your master was your judge, jury, and executioner. If you were a woman, your testimony carried half the weight of a man's. If you were foreign, Jewish, Christian, or just too poor to matter, you had no voice at all. You once saw a man executed for tearing down a notice board. It blocked his shop's entrance. He complained. He removed it. The penalty? Crucifixion. Not because it fit the crime, but because it sent a message. Rome believed in visible order. Justice was something to be watched. The Forum wasn't just a place of business. It was a stage for punishment. People gathered to see it, brought their children, sold snacks, laughed. One man was burned alive for spreading false prophecies. Another was paraded naked on a donkey, then stoned. You remember them. And now, people remember you, not by name, but as the one who stole the apple. No one cares that you were innocent. In Rome, the sentence came first. The story came later. It's sunset in Rome. The sky turns a smoky orange. The marble columns cast long shadows. Merchants close their stalls. Street dogs growl, already scavenging. You've survived another day, but you're not safe yet, because in Rome, night is when the city becomes dangerous. You live in a cramped insula, an ancient Roman apartment block, 5 stories high, made of crumbling brick and cheap timber. Your room is near the roof. No plumbing, no heat. There's a single wooden door between you and the hallway. You wedge a stool against it. That's your security system. Outside, voices rise. A man yells. Then laughter. then glass breaking. You blow out your oil lamp. Darkness. And that's when you hear it. Footsteps on your stairs. The Roman night watch, the vigils, is supposed to keep the peace, but they're poorly paid, poorly trained, and often drunk. They avoid the back alleys. They avoid the subura. That's where you live. So when someone knocks on your door tonight, it won't be help. It will be trouble. Below, you hear a scuffle, a body hitting the ground, then silence. You press your ear to the door. Nothing. But you don't sleep. Not yet. Let's say you do fall asleep. That's when the fire comes. Not from war, not from the gods, but from your neighbor's cooking fire, left smoldering, forgotten. One spark, and the wooden beams above your bed become a funeral pyre. There's no alarm, no fire escape. You wake coughing, choking. Smoke blinds you. You try to run, but the hallway's already an oven. And the worst part? This happens every week. You survive the fire, barely. Your lungs ache. Your hair is singed. A neighbor didn't make it. No one will ask his name. By sunrise, the city already forgets. You try to rest during the next night, but sleep is more dangerous than ever. There are no locks on your door, just hope. You clutch your coin pouch against your chest, if you have any money left, because tonight the nocturni roam the streets. Not vigilantes, not guards, just desperate men in cloaks who know every alley, every shadow, every drunk too slow to run. They don't speak, they don't bargain, they just take. But there's something worse. You hear it whispered, body snatchers, not thieves of gold, but of corpses. They need them for medicine, for burial scams, for sacrifices. So if you die alone in your apartment tonight, there might not be anything left of you by morning, just your empty sandals and a blood smear on the wall. You pray for safety, but you also fear the gods, because in Roman belief, some deaths summon spirits, the lemures, restless, angry dead, souls who wander at night, angry they were buried improperly, or not at all. You think of the beggar you saw beaten to death 3 nights ago. Was he buried? Did anyone light a candle? Will he come for you tonight? In the darkness, you hear a soft creak. Not your door, your floorboards. Something shifts. You freeze. Was it a rat or something else? You don't find out because you don't move, you don't breathe, you just wait for dawn. And when the first light pierces the shutters, you're still alive, but not rested. Never rested. Because in ancient Rome, sleep was not rest. It was a gamble, a risk, a luxury for those too rich to worry. You? You sleep with one eye open, every night. And someday, you won't wake up at all. You need money, not for luxury, not for comfort, just to survive. Your hands are calloused, your back is sore, but you still get in line at the labor market at dawn, hoping to be chosen. You're not alone. There are dozens like you, slaves, freedmen, poor citizens, even boys no older than 10, all waiting for death to call them by name in the form of a job. The first offer comes, Cloaca Maxima, the great sewer. They need a man small enough to crawl through the drainage tunnels beneath Rome. The pay is decent, for a reason. You take the job. Within the first hour, you're waist deep in human waste, dead rats and fetid water. The walls are slick. The air is a swamp of methane and decay. You gag, you slip. You cut your hand on a broken amphora. And the worst part? The screams. Because sometimes bodies float down here. Sometimes they're not quite dead. You don't ask questions, you just work. After your shift, you emerge into the daylight, smelling like rot. People cross the street to avoid you. You've earned a coin. You've lost a piece of yourself. The next day, you're offered something new. Brick kiln labor. Heat, they say. Not just from the sun, but from the fire pits that bake clay into stone. The walls radiate furnace-like temperatures. Your skin burns. Your lungs fill with red dust. One man collapses mid-shift. They drag him out and tell you to cover his place, because the bricks must keep coming. Rome is always building and always burning people to do it. But maybe you're lucky. Maybe you're chosen for a job outside the city. You're going to the mines, and you don't realize you might never return. You've been assigned to the mines. They tell you it's a simple job. Break stone, carry ore, easy. What they don't tell you is that the mines are tombs. You descend into the earth, deeper, darker, hotter. There's no fresh air, only dust, sweat, and the steady drip of groundwater through stone. You swing a pickaxe in near total darkness, guided only by torchlight and the groans of the man next to you. Some miners go blind after a month. Others suffocate from gas. A few vanish in collapses. The lucky ones die quickly. Above ground, someone has to smelt the ore. That's another job. A worse one. You stand beside blazing furnaces, shoveling coal and ore into molten pits. No gloves, no goggles, no pause. The fumes are thick. You cough blood. You pass out. They throw water on you and shout you back to your feet. There's no such thing as sick leave in Rome. But maybe, just maybe, you escape the city and land a job as a lime worker. All you have to do is crush limestone and pour water on it to make plaster. Simple. Until the lime reacts. It burns through your skin. It scorches your lungs. You breathe in caustic dust all day, coughing until your throat feels like sandpaper. And then there's the soldier's job. It sounds noble. It's not. If you're sent to a frontier post, you'll be stationed in Germania or Britannia. Cold, wet, miserable places where the locals hate you and the roads don't reach. You wear thin leather sandals in the snow. You sleep in drafty barracks. You eat stale bread and hope the raiders don't come at night. And when your 20 years of service are over, if you survive, they might give you a plot of land. Might. The reality? Most jobs in ancient Rome weren't about building society. They were about burning through bodies, replacing the broken, discarding the dead, and moving on. Because Rome never stopped growing. It just fed on the lives of the nameless. People like you. Let's imagine again. You wake up, but not in a Roman insula, not with bedbugs, moldy straw, and the threat of fire above your head. You wake up in your own bed, with sheets, maybe even a pillow. The air is clean. The temperature is regulated. There is a ceiling light switch, a refrigerator nearby, a glass of water, clean water, waiting for you. Congratulations. You've already outlived most Romans by morning. You step into the shower. Hot water. On demand. In Rome, that required a whole aqueduct system and a staff of slaves. Even the emperors couldn't turn a knob and get warmth in 5 seconds. You brush your teeth. You don't have scurvy. You don't spit blood. You eat breakfast. It didn't rot overnight. It wasn't stolen by rats. You put on clothes. They're soft. Not wool dipped in vinegar to kill lice. You check your phone. A small glowing screen connects you to the entire planet. In ancient Rome, the only way to spread a message was carving it into stone or hoping the messenger didn't get eaten by wolves. And now you're thinking about all this. You're alive, comfortable, bored maybe, but boredom is a luxury. One Romans would have traded their last denarius for. In Rome, everything was fragile. A scratch could kill you. A rumor could ruin you. A wrong glance at the wrong man could end your life in an alley, or worse, an arena. You have options. You can vote or not, speak out or not, sleep in or not. Even listening to this boring story is a freedom Romans didn't have, because most couldn't read, and none had electricity past sundown. But before we end, let's take one more walk. You walk through the ruins now, the Colosseum, broken but still standing. Once it echoed with screams and cheers, with lions and executions. Now, tourists and pigeons, you run your fingers across the stone, cold, ancient, silent. But it wasn't always silent. This place once devoured people for sport. Men, women, children, burned, drowned, torn apart, to distract a bored population, not because they were evil, but because they were poor. You visit a Roman bath, now it's a museum. Back then, a petri dish of disease and politics. The rich soaked and schemed. The poor swept the floors and died from infections. The water was warm. The intentions never were. You visit a Roman road, still straight, still solid, built by hands that never saw freedom. Slaves dragged stone across continents to make it. Legionaries died defending it. Merchants rode it to riches they never shared. Now, you take a picture, post it online. You don't smell the blood baked into the gravel. You stand still, and you realize you wouldn't last a day here, not because you're weak, but because you're used to dignity. You're used to rights. You're used to waking up and believing the world owes you life. Romans didn't have that. They had empire. You have comfort. They had immortality in marble. You have peace in obscurity. They lived loud, dangerous, painful lives. You live quiet, boring, comfortable ones. And when your head hits the pillow tonight, remember this. You were never meant to survive ancient Rome. And thank the gods you didn't have to try.